Hey, welcome back. And in this video, we're working on Python loops and if-else statements. And this is where Python gets really fun because we can actually start to see how Python can solve real-world problems. And we're jumping right in. I got our Jupyter notebook here. It's ready. It's open. I've already started by creating us a new variable called pizza toppings with a list. And use pizza toppings because, hey, who doesn't like pizza, right? So I kind of have a simple agenda here already outlined for us to follow. And we're going to learn all the basics that comprise of Python loops and Python if and if-else and else statements. So let's get started. So right here on looping, we are going to do a simple looping example. And what it is it's called a for loop, and it's very simple. All you have to do is type in for, and we're going to do topping in pizza toppings, which is our list, with a colon, indicating that, hey, everything we do after this colon, we're going to iterate through the list. Okay. The indentation is important. We'll talk about it in just a second. All right, so for topping in pizza toppings, let's print topping. I'm going to explain what's happening here. All right, so what is happening? Well, we have pizza toppings, and pizza toppings is our list right here. And what we're saying is, hey, for topping, in pizza toppings, so go through and iterate through pizza toppings, and whatever index or value that you're at as you iterate through this list, that value becomes topping. Okay, so at the very first iteration, it's for cheese in pizza toppings, print cheese, and then it goes to the next one, for pepperoni in pizza toppings, print pepperoni. So that's a very simple example, and that's why after it goes through the entire list, it actually is printed out 8 times. It's gone through this loop 8 times to print out each one of our pizza topping ingredients. Okay, so on that, let's quickly talk about indentation, because indentation in Python is critical to proper Python operations. So Python uses indentation to determine how a line or group of lines is related to the rest of the program. So, for example, when we did our for statement of topping in pizza toppings and our colon, which means to iterate the for, you'll notice that when you're in Jupyter and hit enter, it automatically does the indentation for you. What if we didn't indent and we said print topping? Well, it's going to throw an error. And Python is pretty smart. It already kind of knows that, hey, I think that you should have indented and you were trying to do a for loop, but I didn't find it. So it's saying, hey, expected in indented block. So you just need to hit the tab key and that re-indents, and you can hit Control Enter and it works. So indentation is really important, and you're going to see by the end of this video, we're actually going to build a working application, and you're going to see how the indentations of both the for loops and the if statements, that it's critical for the application to work correctly. All right, so indentation is very important. Let's talk about the range function. So we can do something like this: for number in range of 1, 6, let's print num. Okay, whoop, sorry, not 1, 6, like this with a comma, 1, 6. Okay, what just happened? Well, we just printed out essentially a list that had all of these values in it, and it iterated through that list and printed them out. But we don't have that actual list anywhere. It generated it on the fly here using the range command. So what it's saying is, hey, for each number in this list of numbers that is a numbers 1 through 6, print each number. Now you'll notice that, hey, it actually only prints 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but we said 1 to 6. This is another one of those use cases with Python where 6 is not being included. You're including the first value, you're including a 1 integer all the way up to a 6, but not including 6. So for example, we can do this up to 20 and hit enter. And it's going to print 1 to 19, as you'll see here. Okay, so the range function will actually create a range of numbers automatically in a list for you to use, which is pretty helpful. Here's an example of how you can create a list that you can use later on in your code from a range. So I'm going to do that now. We're going to do first we need to give it a name. So we could call this number list, and it equals range 1, 6. But in order for this to be a list, we have to wrap this in a list function, and that converts it to a list. Okay, so if I do that and then I print num list, look at that, it's printing up here still 1 through 5, and then it printed a generated list of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we can now use this variable of num list anywhere in our code. So that's very helpful if you wanted to convert a range to an actual usable list in your program. All right, what about working with parts of a list? And in particular, how do we slice a list? And you're going to see how all of this stuff starts to come together later on. So here we go. Let's slice a list. I'm going to print pizza toppings again so that you can see. All right, here are our 8 pizza toppings. But what if I only want the first 3 toppings? I can do this. Pizza toppings, and in brackets I can say I want from 0 to 3. Okay, I'm gonna print this. Okay, so here's our original pizza toppings, and now you'll see that our little range indicator here had us print out only the first 3. So this can be very helpful when you have to iterate through a list. Now this works in many different ways. By the way, you actually don't even have to add the 0. You can just say :3 to get the first 3. All right. Or if you want to get everything from index 3 to the end, you can say 3: and that gets 0, 1, 2, 3, which is olives all the way to the end of the list. Okay. Or you can even get more precise and say, hey, give me everything from index 2 to 6. And that will give me index 2 mushrooms, olives, chicken, ham, and ham. So that gives me indexes 2 through 6, and there's your results. So that's called slicing a list. Okay? And the reason why you can do that is maybe you want to later loop through a slice. So I want to just get the top 3 ingredients of pizza toppings, and they're always the first 3 in my list. So all I need to do there is say, hey, for topping in pizza toppings, and again I'm gonna do 0, 3, so getting the top 3, or again I can do this for shorthand, print the topping. And I am going to comment out these so they don't confuse us. Okay, there we go. So here's our top 3 toppings in our pizza toppings list. Okay, so that's actually iterating through a sliced list. How can we copy a list? Let's say that we want to copy the current contents of a list to a new list. Okay, well, what you might think is doing something like this. New pizza list is equal to pizza toppings. Now, this looks like it works, but it doesn't. And the reason why is, remember what's happening. We're doing assignments. And when we do this, new pizza list now becomes a reference to pizza toppings. So if pizza toppings later changes, so does new pizza list, right? So how can I do an exact copy of our pizza toppings to our new pizza list so that we could later modify our new pizza list without modifying our original pizza toppings? Is we just do something like this. What that's saying is, hey, copy as a slice all pizza toppings and create it into a new variable called new pizza list. We could also do this for something like this. Top 3 toppings. Okay. Pizza toppings, and do this. Okay, this creates a brand new list with the top 3 toppings. And this works. So if I was to do this and print top 3 toppings, I'm going to comment this out so it doesn't mess us up. There you go. We have a new list now with our top 3 toppings, and we can use this variable anywhere we want. By the way, something I haven't touched on is naming conventions. This is called snake case. It's very typical in Python. It's the preferred method. And every language has its preferred method of writing out what a variable or object looks like. In this case, they use underscores. So just as you see this is very common in Python to write and to separate words with underscores. And there you go. All right, let's talk about conditional tests. So before we can talk about if statements, we have to talk about how we can test if something is true or false so that the if statement functions correctly. All right, so how do we do this? Well, let's go back to our old cars example that we used a couple lessons ago. Let's say that we have a car and it's equal to, we're going to set car to BMW. And then I'm going to do this. Car is equal to BMW. Okay, we have 2 different expressions here. They're doing different things. I'm going to hit Control Enter, and you're going to see that this statement returned true. So what happened? Well, in the first statement, we assigned the variable car to equal BMW. And then the second one is doing a comparison to check if it's true or false. Does car equal BMW, which is true because we just assigned it BMW. Now, there's a catch, okay? I want you to see this. Does car equal, BMW? What do you think? What do you think will happen? This is false. And the reason that it's false is that conditional tests are case sensitive. So this lowercase BMW does not in fact equal this uppercase BMW. So how might we reconcile that? Well, let's do a case sensitive conditional test down here, and I'll show you how. So if we wanted to, if we didn't care about case sensitivity and we just want to know, hey, if BMW equals BMW, then it's true, and that's all I care about, you can do something like this. You could say car dot lower is equal to BMW. Okay, and that will return true because it's taking an uppercase BMW, it's converting it to lowercase through the lower method, okay, and then it's comparing it against BMW. Now again though, if you have something like this, it's going to again return false because all lowercase here does not equal some lowercase over here. So what you'd want to do is make this lower as well. And now it returns true because it took BMW with a capital B, put it in lowercase, and compared 2 lowercase items together. So that's one way when you are not super concerned with case sensitivity. You just want to know, does this equal this? You can throw on the lower method. It puts both of them in lowercase and compares them together. So that's how to do that. Okay, what about conditional tests with numbers? Well, okay. Does 1 equal 1? Yes, it does. That's true. And I'm going to comment this out. We don't need any of this anymore. So does 1 equal 1? Yes. All right. Does 1 equal 1.0? What do you think? Actually, it does. It's true. It still knows that 1, even though this is a float, it does know that they are the same. So 1 does equal 1.0. Great. What about does 5 equal 10 divided by 2? What do you think? It's also true. Okay, it does the mathematical equations of both sides. It compares it. Yes, it comes back that yes, it's true. Well, is 5 greater than 10 divided by 2? What do you think? Is 5 greater than 10 divided by 2? It comes back false. That's because 5 is not greater than 5, right? Now, if we did, is it greater than or equal to, it would come back as true, right? Or if we were to say 5 is greater than 2, it would be true. But 5 is not greater than 5. So you would need to do, you can use greater than and equal to, or less than and equal to also works. Okay. What about, does 5 equal 5? Well, this is obviously false because now we're comparing two completely different data types. A 5 integer does not equal a 5 string, right? How do you know what a type is? You can just use the type function and say, hey, what is the type of 5? It's an integer. All right, well, what's the type of 5 in strings? I mean, type of 5 in quotes. It's a string, right? Great. Let's look at multiple conditions. So what if I say, okay, car, we're going to open back up car up here. So car is equal to BMW. Okay. So is car equal to BMW? And is type of car equal to a string? What do you think? The answer is true. Now, both conditions on both sides of the and have to be true in order for it to ultimately be true in an and statement. So car is equal to BMW. Yes, it's true. Is the type of car a string? Yes, it is. If we were to say, hey, the car is equal to BMW and the type of car is equal to an integer, it would return a false, because although this is true, this is false, and therefore it will not work. But if we use an or statement, then it's true, because an or statement is only looking for one of the conditions to be true for the overall output to be true. So because car is equal to BMW is true, even though this is false, it still returns true. Okay, well, what about this? And 5 is equal to 5. What's going to happen here? Okay, we have this. Normally, what's really important here is that you put your or statement in parentheses. Okay, and so what's happening here? Well, it's checking to see if this or this is true, then this is true, and as long as this is also true, then everything's true. So when using or statements with and statements, always wrap your or statement in parentheses so that they're evaluated separately. And then your and statements will be outside, and then you'll make sure that you're properly doing a conditional test against all the elements correctly. All right. Last here, what if we want to check if a value is in or not in a list? This is very easy. We can just say, okay, going back to pizza toppings, we can say mushrooms are in pizza toppings. And it returns true. And it returns true because mushrooms at the top is right here. It is in pizza toppings. But let's say we messed up and we said mushroom is in pizza toppings. If I run that, it's false. Okay. So this allows you to quickly look inside of an entire list and see if that item is there. Not in does the exact opposite. So if mushroom is not in pizza toppings, then return true, which it isn't. So mushroom is true that it's not in pizza toppings. Now mushrooms would return false because it is in pizza toppings, and therefore the not in is false. So, and this is true. All right, so that's checking if a value is in or not in a list, and we're going to be using that in just a minute. We're ready to look at if statements. Okay, so let's write out a really simple if statement. So, okay, if car is equal to, we're doing BMW again. If car is equal to BMW, then we're going to do something. So, and again, we're using the indentation just like we did for the for loop, right? Then print, nice job, great car. You can see that I like BMWs, right? Awesome. So if car is equal to BMW, then do this, right? Well, what happens if it's not? Nothing. Okay, well, dang, what if we want something to happen if, you know, if it's not caught? Well, let's look at the next example. An if-else statement. Let's say if car is equal to BMW, then print nice job, great car, else, also with a colon, print get a BMW. All right, so if the car is equal to BMW, nice job, great car. But if we put in here Toyota, it prints out get a BMW. So that's how an if-else statement works. The else is kind of a catch-all. If the if part of the condition does not return true, it's going to do whatever's in the else statement. Okay? Okay, so now what if we wanted to have multiple if statements or if conditions with an else condition? We can do that. We can chain these together, essentially. So if I do if, we're going to use pizza toppings, mushrooms is in pizza toppings. So if mushrooms is in pizza toppings, we're going to do something. We're going to print yes. Mushrooms are great. And I'm talking about the ones on a pizza. And by the way, you'll notice I'm showing you here that you can use either double quotes or single quotes. This is for demonstration. When you actually code, make sure that you stick with only one. It just makes your code easier to read. I honestly usually use single quotes, but I've seen people that only like to use double quotes. Double quotes, again, the caveat is that it's easier if you're printing something out that has apostrophes in it. But I am showing you that you can use either. Just kind of find which one you like the most. I think single quotes looks a little cleaner, but I'm kind of using both to show you that both work. Okay, so if mushrooms is in pizza toppings, print yes, mushrooms are great. ElIf, which stands for else if, cheese, because you gotta have cheese, is in pizza toppings, then you gotta print yes, cheese is great. Okay. Now, if neither of these, so else, we're gonna print get some good toppings. All right. So we know that this is gonna return true right off the top because mushrooms does exist in pizza toppings. Now, something to note. In an if-else-if statement or chain, once a condition is true, it stops there and it jumps to the next thing. It doesn't go, once this reached true, it didn't then also evaluate this and then move to the else. It had no reason to. It already knew that this was true. And that's why it's only saying yes, mushrooms are great, instead of saying yes, mushrooms are great and yes, cheese is great, although both of these conditions are true. So that's important to know, is that it's only going to evaluate and find the first true statement and jump out of the statement. Okay? Now, if we do mushroom, that becomes not true now, so it's going to move to cheese. And it's going to say, okay, yes, cheese is great, but it could not find that mushrooms being true in pizza topping, because mushroom is not. All right, and then if we do cheese is, it's going to finally default to the else statement saying, hey, get some good toppings. All right? So that's important to remember as you're going through an if-else-if chain. Okay, what about checking if a list is empty? Okay, so this is pretty easy. You just say, hey, if pizza toppings, then print there are toppings. Okay. What will this, is this true or not? And I'll put an else just in case. Maybe here we say error, no toppings. Okay, is this true or not? We're gonna run it. There are toppings, because when you just say if pizza toppings, you don't have to write a conditional on this. It just is, it's evaluating it. Is there anything in this list? If there is, it's true. If there isn't, it's false. Okay? So if I was to say, for example, new list equals an empty list, like this, and I evaluated the new list, you'll see that it returns error, no toppings. Because even though there is an actual viable variable, it is empty, and therefore it returns it as false. So that's how to check if a list is empty. All right, how about using loops and if-else statements together? Okay, so how about something like this? For the topping in pizza toppings, and notice, we haven't really discussed this before, but notice that the actual list of multiple items is plural, while the single item we're pulling out of the list is singular. And that's writing good Python code, is keeping this singular and keeping this plural. So you can tell, oh, one's the list, one's the item from the list that I'm iterating. Okay, so for topping in pizza, okay, if the topping is equal to mushrooms, then we're gonna say, then we're gonna print we don't have mushrooms. I'm sorry. Cannot make pizza. All right. So if topping comes along and it finds mushrooms, it's saying we don't have mushrooms, we cannot make the pizza. Else print we have, and we'll say we have this item, we can make the pizza. Okay, and then I'm going to add a format method and add in the topping. So remember, this is, we talked about this back in strings, where this is formatting this the brackets into inserting whatever this variable is. And I'll show you what that does. All right, so let's run it. Okay, so it's going through the loop, it's going through the list. So we have cheese, we have pepperoni, we don't have mushrooms because it hit this conditional, which is true, and said we cannot make the pizza, we have olives, we have chicken, we have ham, and so on. So this is how you can organize, and again, the indentation is very important. You can organize the for loop with the if loop and with the if statement inside, and do your conditionals inside of a loop, which is great, and you're going to use it all the time. Okay, bringing it all together. This is where it gets fun, because we get to build an actual application that works. So here we go. We're going to build our simple pizza order application. And what we want this application to do is for a employee to be able to type in a new order for a pizza, and we're going to check to make sure that the ingredients that they enter are not on our out of stock list. Otherwise, the pizza cannot be made. Okay? So an actual practical example. So we're going to split this application into two parts. One is collecting the information from the employee for the new order, and the second one is to run the conditional statements to check and see, can the pizza actually be created and do we have all the ingredients? All right. So first thing I'm going to do is, I know that I'm going to need a couple lists and variables in order to make this work. One is whatever the new order is. Okay, so we're going to make a new order variable. We need those items that are out of stock. Okay, and then I know that later on in my code, I'm going to need to be able to check if everything with the pizza is okay. And by default, I'm going to assign that to true. Okay, and true and false in Python have to be title case. It needs to be, for example, true like this does not work, and true like this does not work. It has to be capital T, true. And that, as you can see by the coding in the program, that is a valid Boolean value. Okay, so we're going to do two things here. We're going to do collect. Let's collect the new order from employee, and let's validate the order as number 2. All right, so we're going to do a couple things we haven't even discussed here, and that's actually getting input. We're going to want to be able to collect multiple toppings in the application. So the first thing we need to do is ask the employee how many toppings, what are the number of toppings on the pizza. So number of toppings is going to equal input how many toppings. Okay. All right. Now, I know something already, that this has to be an integer or it's not going to work. And I'm going to show you why in a minute. But just know that we have to wrap this in an integer function, because if we don't, then it comes out as a string. So number of toppings is going to be an integer, and it's going to be the number that they put into this prompt. Let me show you what that looks like. It's going to ask them how many toppings, and they're going to say, well, there's 2 toppings or whatever. Okay. All right. And then, so what we're going to do is we're going to add a for statement, a for loop, and we're going to say for the number in, and we're going to need to create a range, and I'm going to show you why all this is in just a second. Number of toppings, and it needs to be +1, and again, I'll show you why in a second. We're going to want to collect more input. So we're going to say, we're going to do, call this user input. What is topping number, and we'll say number 1. And again, this has to be a string or this isn't going to work. Actually, you know what? To make this easier, we'll just do this. What is topping number? We'll use the format method that we've learned before. Format num. Okay, so what is topping number? And it's going to say number 1 or number 2 or number 3. Okay, let me show you what I mean by that. If I put in how many toppings and there's 3 toppings, it's going to say, well, what's not topping number 1? Well, it's mushrooms, and then cheese, and then peppers. Okay, notice how this is why I'm collecting the number of toppings up here, to know how many times to prompt them 4 toppings below. So let me explain what's happening now. We're collecting the number of toppings, and I put in 3, and then for each number in a range of 1 to 3 plus 1, which is 4. Because remember, if I was to just do how Python works, if I was just to do 1 and then put 3 here, it only asks me for toppings twice. So I'm forcing it to be to take my integer of number of toppings, and I'm adding 1. So I'm getting a range of 1, comma 4, and then so it's like, okay, I need to iterate 4 times. That's going to ask the user input 4 times. What is the topping number? And then each time we get that user input, we want to append that to our new order. So we have our, remember our new order variable up here. We're going to do new order, append the user input. All right. Okay, so let's test this. If I run this and I say how many toppings? 2. Mushrooms and peppers. I want to show you that this is working. If I come down here and I print the new order, look at that. It worked. It collected both of our items from our input and it appended them back into the new order object. So this is working. So once we have our user input, we need to go and validate the order. All right. So to do that, that's pretty simple. We're just going to do another for loop for item in the new order. So for each item, if that item is in out of stock, which we haven't put anything in there yet. Okay. If the item is in the out of stock list, then the pizza okay variable gets turned to false. Okay. Otherwise, nothing else. Okay. And I'll show you why. Down here, we're going to do another if. So if pizza is okay, so if it's true, you don't need to do anything besides type pizza okay. If it's true, then we're going to print yes, pizza can be made. We have all the toppings, right? Or else print no, pizza cannot be made. We don't have all the toppings. Okay? And then let's put something out of stock up here. Maybe we do not want anchovies. Right? So let's try it. Let's try our new application. I'm going to hit Control Enter. How many toppings? There are 2 toppings. What's topping number 1 is mushrooms, and topping number 2 is cheese. Yes, the pizza can be made. We have all the toppings. All right, let's rerun the application. Again, we're the employee. We're going to put in 3 toppings. We need cheese on the pizza. They also want anchovies for some reason. And they also want peppers. No, the pizza cannot be made because we don't have all the toppings. So it knows that anchovies was one of those conditions that returned false, therefore turning pizza okay equal to false. So when it evaluated our final statement of is pizza okay, it was false and therefore printed out the else statement. So our application works. How cool is that? And this is a really comprehensive look. Well, not comprehensive, pretty simple, but we got to do that really cool application at the end. Look at Python loops and if-else statements. I hope you've liked it. We're going to jump in to our next lesson into dictionaries and learn about key value pairs, which are super powerful. And I will see you there.